Hey everyone, thank you for listening to the Drinks.com podcast, the business of online alcohol. I'm your host, Brandon Amoroso, and today I'm talking with Vintage Wine Estate's Chief Growth Officer and the founder of Cameron Hughes Wine, Jessica Kogan. Thanks for coming on the show today.
Thanks for having me.
So before we dive into things here, can you give everybody just sort of a quick background and history on your story?
Oh, sure. So let's see. I came to the wine industry probably when you were in elementary school. I've been in this business for quite some time. I started or co-founded what was at one time the largest digitally native wine business called Cameron Hughes Wine. And I did that for quite a few years. The company was acquired by Vintage Wine Estates, which is a large wine holding company, in 2017. And in 2017, started to oversee all of Vintage's direct-to-consumer business. Did that for a while, both as their chief digital officer and chief marketing officer. Took a quick pause away from the business, came back as their chief growth and experience officer, which feels more reflective of kind of also the evolution of like my interests and my work. So yeah, it's been a great ride.
How would you explain like your current role to somebody who isn't as intimately familiar with this side of the business?
Sure. So it's actually really, so there's in the industry that I was like basically that I grew up in, the vertical of experience I grew up in is really in marketing. And our end point was always the chief marketing officer. But with technology and the influence of technology and marketing, things have really changed. And as a marketer, our role really in so many ways is about influence and influence around the narrative of the conversation, influence around the communication of the brand, influence around customer experience. And so a chief growth and experience officer is really super focused on really working with all of the business units within an organization to really take to heart and put forth brand meaning and brand value in all the work they do. So whatever software systems they use, it really is a reflection of the brand of the company. We want things to be easy. We want to empower employees. We want vendors to have a great relationship with us. So that's one aspect. And that's the experience component, both internal and external. The consumer, how is the consumer engaging with our digital products? You know, what is it that they like? How are we improving their journey, etc. Growth is really a function of technology, right? So when we do things right, when we are applying like good digital usability principles within the organization and outside the organization, we actually create new spaces of growth and new channels of growth, new areas of creating revenue. And specifically in the adult beverage industry, that's really what we're seeing at retail in their kind of their own digital transformations from seeing themselves only as a physical entity into a digital physical entity.
Got it. That makes sense. What would you say is like your favorite thing about your current role and what you're working on right now?
My favorite part of what I get to do is really be on the leading edge of what is going on in terms of the application of technology in all that we do. Now, outside of production, right? Outside of winemaking, but really both in advertising and in internal portal systems, external customer sites, relationships and kind of publishing relationships. And there's just like so many awesome things that I get to be involved in that are just like kind of next level. Like I get to do metaverse work. I get to really touch everything. Obviously the hot topic is AI. I get to touch that. I mean, every part of technology is something that I really get to touch and think about and present to our company and really lay out the roadmap for what the future might look like.
Yeah, I mean, I think technology can really restrict and inhibit a brand's growth if you're set up with the wrong tools. And I think, at least from sort of the outside looking in, the in-person experience that I get when I go to, let's say, like a Napa winery, like the tasting room, everything that goes on, it's really done at like a high level.
Mhm.
It's very well thought through, and it's just, at least from my opinion, really hard to emulate that online. At least right now, like I don't, I'm not going to get anywhere near the same experience going to a winery website as I would if I actually went in person. I think part of that is due to some like historical limitations around technology. Um,
Yeah, I mean, I think it's historical limitations around technology, but it's also ownership of the brand, right? I mean, traditionally, the ownership of the brand has lived in wholesale, and has lived really in the wholesale function. And so the approach is a much more static approach than a dynamic approach. They're thinking about a label that is going to be sold, and not really receive any feedback till like 6 or 7 months later. So it's less, I think it's just, again, it's a function of kind of where brand grew up in, which is in wholesale, and where digital is, which is really is a function of brand, but becoming a more powerful voice piece of brand.
where do you think, you mentioned AI, like how do you see that impacting vintage and really just the alcohol industry as a whole? Are there a couple of things that you're like, this is something that can be like implemented, or this could potentially be like revolutionary in this particular like category?
I mean, I don't know. I mean, there's so many things it can do, but like in simple, like for simple tactical stuff, I mean, ChatGPT could write wine notes. I mean,
Hmm.
it can. It can write, technical winemaker notes. It can write brand stories. It can write, I mean, it can pretty much do everything that we do, just set a little bit like slightly off versus how we may say it ourselves. And that's like pretty
Yeah.
insane, like really, 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 really insane. So I think that it's really interesting to see what's going to happen. Um, I think I walk with caution with AI. Um, at the same time, it sincerely excites me.
Yeah. Yeah, the wine notes is one for sure. I think we have like our label generator on the drink side, and I was thinking through like, well, why not just be able to type a prompt and like it'll spit back out a label based off of you want to get these certain characteristics and whatever it may be.
Yeah.
Um, I think
And
there's
did it work? Did you try it?
so. I mean, we'll have to consult with the data science team. I think they're in the early sort of workings of that. But that's where like my head goes to like an end product. Like it'd be great if you could, because right now, not to get sidetracked, but it feels like a lot of label creation is
Hmm.
done based off of not necessarily like hard data backed like evidence. It's
Yeah.
more so
I
you
like
sit with a
this
brand
name. It's a
team.
great name, named after my dog.
Yeah,
I love my dog.
exactly. Versus being able to say, I'm trying to appeal to this particular target. I'm trying to enter into these specific like geographic regions. Like why there's so many things that we still do that a computer would be better off telling us. And I think that would be one of them. Like you need to like here's a couple of different variations and then maybe we go ahead and fine tweak it. But like
Hmm.
getting it to that point where we want a label to evoke like love and family or something, and then
Hmm.
we want it to appeal to 44 to 55 or whatever it may be.
Hmm.
Um, I think that is where we're headed with a lot of things. And then it sort of bypasses a lot of the initial like grunt work, and then it
Hmm.
allows us to be more creative and then like take whatever's generated by these tools and then like leverage that moving forward. But we'll
Yeah,
see.
I mean, I absolutely see that as a possibility. I mean, I also see it as a possibility of, doing the first blends. You know, it. There's so much it
Hmm.
can do.
Yeah. And there's scary stuff too. Like I don't know if you saw recently in the news, there was like the AI basically turned against its human operator. It was like a US military test, and the AI in this simulation removed the human operator from the equation because it was getting in the way of its like end goal. And I'm like, this is some what's the movie? This is like some
AI.
Terminator whatever style stuff.
Yeah.
It's a little bit scary
No,
too.
totally. I mean, Steven Spielberg had that movie. I think it was called AI or Artificial Intelligence. And then, have you ever seen the movie Gattaca? Oh,
I
it's a good
don't
one.
think so.
You should.
We'll look it up.
Should be on your list.
Gattaca. Okay.
Gattaca. Yeah.
I'll add it to. I'm a movie junkie, so I'll add it
Please do.
to the
Oh,
pipeline
you're
here.
gonna love it. It's really good.
So touching on and expanding on AI a little bit, you're overseeing really the digital sort of experience for. I mean, how many brands are there now at VWE? Over 2 dozen at least.
There
Um,
are currently I think about 32 brands.
okay.
And there are, it's divided between estate brands, lifestyle brands, and digitally native brands.
How do you think of having unique sort of digital experiences for each property, but then
Mm.
also still being able to have efficiencies with having 32 different brands?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, you each site should be unique in story and in design to the feeling and function and taste of the brand or of the wine. But in checkout, I mean, which is really, you want your checkout to be frictionless, easy, and simple. And so ultimately, the hope is that in your back office and in your display, um, all of that information is kind of replicatable across your brands and brand sites. So it's the cart that changes, but not, it's a cart that's the same, and it's the sites that look totally different.
Got it. Yeah, I think it probably some great overlap with the tech stack, I would assume, in terms of being able to leverage ex-
Yeah,
similar
I mean,
solutions
there's
across
the
them.
you have to. I mean, it's definitely multi-tenant, multi-channel approach. Just in terms of like being able to um, curate, design, develop, and manage so many sites at the same time. So the ability, like there isn't one perfect system out there. So you always have to be open to kind of adopting, like a little bit of the Frankenstein approach, but like your base platform really should have the flexibility to allow you to adopt in um, modules or integrations that are very easy or straightforward.
I mean, I think you've spoken before about just alcohol industry software kind of lagging behind other industries. Um, why do you think that is?
Um, because I mean, first and foremost, because of the industry, the rules of play. Selling direct to consumer in the adult beverage industry is not the same as selling soap or clothing or shoes to people, to consumers in the US. There are we're heavily regulated business. We have a lot of compliance, and every state is like a different state within a state. And so, the adult beverage industry really looks at the world as 50 different states, not at, or 50 different countries and 50 different channels. It doesn't see it as one country. So that made it very prohibitive and costly to get in, A. And then B, once you navigated past the rules, each state in their ability to support direct to consumer business, or desire or lack of desire, puts limits and regulations on what consumers can and can't have. And so you have to be able to, comply and regulate against those needs by state. And so it's just not easy. It's not a straight shot. And a lot of people in the industry were raised to not really go against the grain. Were raised to not upset the apple cart, which is controlled primarily by distributors. So
I think, I think it was earlier last week, I think Bev got acquired by CBI, I want to say.
Which one?
Bev.
Oh, yeah.
I think Bev got acquired by CBI.
Yeah.
And then, but I want to use them as an example of, but correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like 10 years ago, there weren't really any like Bevs or Nomatica
Correct.
or like some of these wine companies that are almost taking an approach of like a digitally native like coffee company or a digitally native like shoe brand. Do you think that has helped accelerate things a little bit in terms of the progress being made around like alcohol industry technology and how people think about like online?
Well, I mean, I think COVID really changed the game for the industry, and that they saw their retail partners embrace technology in a way that they had never had. And so it really kind of pulled the industry in a direction that they realized that they have to go in. And quite frankly, it wasn't the suppliers like CBI that were against investing in technology and doing direct to consumer or digitally native businesses. It was really their wholesale partners that really weren't game for it. And now they are. And so that has made all the difference in my mind. And so, yes, I think it's been a limitation of general investment in the industry and technology because the belief was that it wasn't possible. And now that the belief it is possible, we're seeing like lots of investment in technology, lots of investment in companies that have already proven themselves digitally and have a decent tech stack. So makes total sense.
Yeah, it feels like retailers, grocery stores, there's a lot more investment going into
Billions.
Yeah, into the online experience.
There was
I guess,
a great McKinsey report that came out last year that basically talked about how transformative technology, consumer-facing technology, is going to be for grocery for the next 10 years, and that they expect by 2025 or that 20% of the U.S. public will be purchasing their groceries online. Like, what does that mean online? It can mean that they are buying it by Instacart. It can mean that they are buying it on Safeway.com and selecting curbside pickup. It can mean that they are buying it on Drizzly and they're doing just their alcohol. It can mean that they are buying on Walmart.com and they're having it shipped to them. I mean, there's just so many applications. And then when you add it all up, it's pretty insane. I mean, I would say if you talk to people 3 years ago, like maybe 1 in 50 or 100 people had used like a third-party app to order their groceries or had gone to an actual website of a grocery store. Now it's like commonplace.
Yeah, I'd say half the time in the grocery store, it's like more people shopping for other people, like to get the orders ready for curbside pickup or some like delivery service than it is people actually shopping for themselves.
Yeah, I mean, it is a huge disruption, and the one thing that they found in this report, and it is true, it has actually proven out, is that when customers buy their carts online, they spend more. They just spend more.
I was just thinking through that probably makes sense. And I would prefer to shop online because I don't know, it's not as scattered. Like you have your online shelf, which is a lot easier to navigate than like going through the store. I mean, every store I go into, it's like, okay, well, which aisle is there X product in or Y product in?
Yeah.
And then I always end up leaving and getting home and I'm like, oh my God, like I can't believe I forgot whatever it was that I really needed that I completely forgot about. And then also ended up with a bunch of stuff that I didn't actually need.
Totally,
Um,
totally. No.
Plus, it's so much easier to leverage like AI and technology in that online experience to
Mhm.
provide personalized recommendations and things like that than you're able to like in store.
Yeah,
So
I mean, I think like I'm a big proponent of the digital to physical and physical to digital. Like I think digital is only as strong as the physical and physical is only as strong as the digital. So my belief is that there are people like you who are like, ah, I'm like go in and I'm so like my shit's ever excuse my language, my stuff's everywhere, like I can't figure it out. It's so much easier for me to just go into the app or, into the Safeway.com app and just like go my last look at my last grocery bag, figure out what I got, and then like open myself to like whatever specials there are. But then there are people who go in store and they like the experience of touching and browsing and seeing, but they also want to know that while they're doing that there's like some validation, digital validation. They're in the store and they're like checking out a product and they're checking the price and they're taken back to the Safeway website. I'm just picking on Safeway right now, and they can see that the price is consistent. They can see that there's consistent, good digital shelf hygiene, like good information. It's not like this abandoned like land of nothing. So I think that it goes both ways, and I believe that while the digital shelf will continually improve, the physical shelf is going to continually improve because customers are always looking for a reason to get out, especially when they have young children.
yeah, I don't have young children yet, but I don't buy anything without Googling it beforehand. I mean, unless it's like food per se, but like in the store, especially with wine,
Yeah,
I'm always looking it up online, especially if the price is above a certain threshold.
yeah,
There's no way I'm just sort of blindly selecting it, and maybe I'm just a pessimist, but I'm not trusting the person in stores recommendations at face value. I'm verifying online through whatever sort of review sources or other channels there are available to me.
yeah,
Um,
yeah. I mean, I think that's a good thing to do. But I will say, like, what I find particularly interesting about the wine industry, not spirits, not beer, but reviews that are written by customers are some of the most interesting reviews and I think that they're some of the most like honest reviews because people really write, like they're really trying to write what it is that they're tasting, whereas like a corollary for a discretionary item might be like a watch or something or a piece of clothing that is expensive, and customers write about it and they're like, oh, it fit really well, or really like the way it looked. But really the thing that I think is so interesting that digital has like opened up and democratized to all us wine drinkers is that it really isn't just the spectator. It really is like all of these individual consumers who are have palates and points of view. And I actually find that I understand customers who speak in like very simple language about wine than I do about like the more complicated cork dork stuff.
Yeah, I mean, some of those reviews I see, and I'm like, this sounds really cool, but I don't actually know what half of these words mean. Or
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
just
yeah,
like,
yeah.
is this good or is it bad? Like,
Yeah.
okay, and then it tastes like something that everybody knows, not some like very obscure fruit that you only find in this particular region of a certain country.
Yeah,
Um, so I
totally.
think there's
Like
like the regular person reviews, and then the next level.
absolutely. But I do think that has been such a win for the wine industry because before everything was really felt so super opaque. And I really think it's one of the most, the greatest, one of the greatest contributions to wine has been digital. Really has like just opened up a whole universe to consumers.
What do you think producers can do like to generate awareness and more sales volume through retailers? and your grocery stores online and in store, that's sort of complementary. Because part of me is like, if you're spending money on digital advertising, there's going to be a byproduct of that ends up going to these retailers that now have like pretty robust e-commerce storefronts.
Yeah.
And so how do you think about like what producers can do to support both sides of that?
Yeah, I mean, it's really, it's curating and, really taking care of your digital shelf presence. So, really having A plus content. A plus content means like, great photography, good videos, good information, lots of reviews, people like us writing reviews, and customers who are verified, who've purchased the product, who have a point of view. It really is spending the same amount of time building out, the physical shelf, the time that you put in, like putting the neckers and like the, little notes on the physical shelf, to the digital shelf where you're, putting the pictures and the writing and you're presenting a very cohesive view of the brand wherever the customer turns. They can feel validated in any channel that they're looking at your brand in. They'll see the same information, just presented slightly differently for the medium.
Mm-hmm. Where do you think the sort of differentiation is between how an older consumer is looking at this information versus maybe necessarily like Gen Z or even younger? Because a lot of the conversations I've had with producers, as they're thinking about like migrating e-com or reevaluating their digital presence, a big sort of focus point for them is, how do we reach people your age, like the younger demographic? I'm an outlier in that I actually like wine and will drink wine that doesn't come out of like a bag or some other sort of like, most of my friends I know, it's either like beer, maybe distilled, and then there's a bunch of alternatives that are now popping up too in other categories. So what are you seeing at VWE as it relates to connecting with that younger consumer?
Yeah. So,
and what are some of the things that they value versus, like, I don't know, I'm forgetting all the generations, but
No, I mean, the boomers and Gen X and millennials and Gen Z. So, I mean, in the context of digital, I think Gen Z is going to be critical to the wine industry and actually re-engaging with the wine industry in a way that millennials have not. And I think what that means to the supplier is that they really have to put the time in and the work to really present a strong brand narrative, both in the digital sense, but also in the technical sense. So what do I mean by technical? Like, the Gen Z will not accept a frictionful checkout. Like, they just won't. They have grown up with Shop Pay. They've grown up with Apple Pay. Like, if it takes more than like 10 seconds to check out, it's over. At the same time, Gen Z is very open to ideas and very open to learning, and that's a beautiful thing. And that's what's good, because wine is not easily understood for most people. So from that perspective, like, I've super huge faith in Gen Z becoming kind of on par with boomers in terms of their interest and engagement in wine. Now, you're on the younger side of Gen Z, and you happen to have grown up in a universe with a lot of wine, so you're kind of an anomaly. But your cohort will really start getting into wine, in their early 30s, early to mid 30s, which has been the traditional kind of path. Millennials came to it very late because of the recession in 2008. So they're just a little bit behind in terms of income generation. And so their interest in wine is not as high. They also are very interested in ready to drink as your cohort is right now too, because it's a lot of flavors and it's low calorie and it's all of these things, and it's good for you. But the thing that the wine industry has done a poor job of explaining to everybody is that in fact the best thing to put in your body is wine, because it's real, it has no fake stuff in it, and it's like good for you versus, and the same amount of calories. It's just the same. So
I couldn't possibly tell you what are in those seltzers.
they're not good.
Also,
It's not
I
good.
I don't like them personally, and there's like 100 of them now. And it's
Yeah.
like
Oh, they're on fire. They're
the
doing.
other day I saw an ad for one that has like vitamin C added to it. I'm like, why like if I want vitamin C, I'm just going to take vitamin C. Like if I'm drinking, why do I care if I'm getting vitamin C? Like how is this going to make me buy this one versus the other 100 options?
Yeah.
But I think it comes down to marketing. Like you don't see wine being advertised in the way that seltzers are, like good for you, like 100 calories, even though it might be, that's not represented on the product or the label or anything like that.
You're starting to see some of that with like Fitbine. You're also seeing the no alcohol movement, which is definitely picking up some traction. But at the end of the day, I do believe that the one of the greatest blessings to the wine industry has been digital, though I'm sure any wholesaler listening to this conversation is like, I want to wring your neck. But I really do believe that ultimately it will deliver in really in growth in the industry that they haven't seen. It's just going to take a little while.
Yeah. Well, hopefully we can help shepherd that along.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, before we wrap up here, is there a favorite wine memory that you have?
A favorite wine memory.
Business or non-business? It doesn't, anything. Anything's fair game.
I am trying to think of what there's so many. There's so many. Let's see. One of my favorite wine memories was actually when I was out. I live around San Francisco, and I was in Golden Gate Park, and I was having an Italian wine from Montepulciano. And I'm a pretty novice drinker. I mean, I've been in the industry for a long time, but I grew up on the East Coast, and people would say like, I smell like orange, I smell iron, I smell stone, I smell river rock, I smell like, cows. And I'm just like, I like don't taste or smell anything that you're talking about. I just like it or I don't like it. It was just this magical day in Golden Gate, and it was kind of like at the end of the day with the sun going down ever so slightly, and it was like a pink glow, maybe felt like a day in Tuscany, I don't know. And we had opened this just gorgeous bottle of wine, and I just remember having that moment of like, oh my God, I can taste it all. Like I can taste the cinnamon, I can taste the strawberry, I can taste the cherry. Oh, so this is the best wine I've ever had in my entire life. And so I ordered like 2 cases of it. And like 2 weeks later, I found out I was pregnant.
That'll do it.
Intentionally.
Yeah.
But like my senses were so heightened that I could taste all of those things. And oh my God, it's incredible.
I feel like everybody sort of has that light bulb moment. At least for most people I've spoken with, there's always like that one experience or that one bottle that really sort of switched the light bulb on for them. I think that's the really cool part about wine, is that it is so experiential.
It is.
Like you could give me the same bottle exact, and if I'm drinking it alone, like on my couch, versus your experience where there's so much else going on, like the environment, the people that you're with,
it is.
that's what makes it so much more than just a product.
Totally.
Yeah. Well, with that, I think that's a great place to wrap. Thank you so much for joining us. Before we hop off, though, can you just let people know where they could find you online?
Sure. They can find me on LinkedIn at Jessica Kogan, and they can also find the wine company that I co-founded at chwine.com. And they can learn more about Vintage Wine Estates at vintagewineestates.com.
Awesome. Thank you for joining us. For everybody listening, as always, this is Brandon Amoroso. You can find us at drinks.com, and we will see you next time.